First unheard message.
Hi baby, I'm stuck at the gate and they won't let me through.
Anyone who knows me well will tell you that I love my horror, and I'm always on the prowl for all sorts of new additions to the genre. This desire is what led me to take a look at these two games, Caustic Reality's Infliction and Red Candle Games' Devotion. Both of these fall into the same category of walking sim indie titles, but managed to pull off something unique, and each one's right to stand out from the pack. Whether it be in mechanics or narrative, both games gave me some pleasing surprises. Infliction's story touches on a subject that we rarely see portrayed in games: domestic abuse. Through solid example and obscure details, we get a story about a family that's torn apart by tragedy, spiraling into abuse and supernatural damnation. The majority of the story is rooted very heavily in the ugly reality of how these situations can develop and get worse over time. Even when the supernatural elements become more prominent, the weight of the main theme does not lose its impact, but the story itself does become harder to take seriously towards the end. This is because by then the supernatural elements are in full force, and the theme of domestic abuse goes on the back burner, leading to an incredibly jarring shift in tone, where all of a sudden it feels more like a tribute to Hellraiser than a cautionary tale. Gameplay is what you'd expect from a walking sim. You walk around, pick stuff up, look at it, and of course explore the environment. While this may be par of the course, it's alleviated by the fact that the game demands greater interaction from the player. In particular, there's a ghost that's constantly stalking you, and you have to make use of hiding spots to hide from it, and use a camera to scare it away, or to find clues. This is a breath of fresh air for this style of game, since it's all too easy for them to end up themselves with their experience that they never include anything different to really change things up, and have the potential to become a complete snooze fest. But this ghost is unpredictable enough, and thanks to some solid atmosphere and sound design, is terrifying enough to be a real threat that had me jumping in my seat.
What the hell?
Exploring the environment doesn't feel like a chore, thanks largely to how it's used to convey some of the more on-the-nose elements of the story through visuals alone, and some of the interactable objects reveal through audio logs the broader strokes of the narrative, and these are delivered with some really believable voice acting to help draw you in. It also helps that the items you can pick up have some real gems hidden throughout, in particular these fake horror movies that I wish I could watch and drive home the feeling that this was a labour of love for all things horror.
The police want me to see a grief counselor, and I want you to come with me. Will you come with me?
But all the love in the world doesn't make up for the reality that there's just not a lot to see in Infliction. What little there is enjoyable, but once you've gone through the story once, there's no reason to play it again unless you're hooked or a completionist. By then, the game loses a lot of its tension when you know what's going to happen, and you know where to go and how to avoid the ghost. In comparison, Devotion's story is relatable but significantly more surreal, taking some obvious clues from Layers of Fear. As the name implies, the theme is devotion, but it shows how it tore a family in Taiwan apart. From a father working as a writer suffering from writer's block, an actress who sacrificed her career for her family, and finally to a daughter who wanted to follow her mother's footsteps and make her father smile. Is very upfront with what happened to the family, but leaves a lot of the details obscure but reveals practically everything as you progress. Even the usual text documents you find in games tell the finer details to the events you're experiencing, rather than just being collectibles you can miss but need to understand the full story.
感谢您在傍晚倾听我的心声小语。
Unlike Infliction, this is more in line with what you'd expect from the genre, but features a healthy helping of puzzles to break up the constant narrative deluge, and even, funnily enough, a platforming section. A particular highlight is how during a sequence you have to go back and forth between different eras of the family's troubles, bringing items from each puzzle set in others. They can be rather obtuse though. Personally, I struggled with the wine puzzle and I wasn't able to figure it out, and had no choice but to look up a walkthrough just to make heads or tails of it. But with that one example aside, the puzzles are the right type, where you're scratching your head while racking your brains over just how they're supposed to play, but when you do realise the answer for them, you actually feel all the smarter for it. However, now would be a good time to bring up the controversy and availability surrounding Devotion. Basically what happened was the devs at Red Candle hit a Winnie the Pooh meme in the game that poked fun at Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and in response, the CCP had the game review bombed and eventually taken off of Steam. So now the only way to get your hands on this is through piracy until Red Candle manages to get it back on storefronts, which compounds another problem: technical stability. Now don't get me wrong, this game works fine and as you can see looks good too, but while playing I hit a critical game-breaking bug, where it got stuck during a transition to the next section and endlessly looped the music, leaving me in an eternal void fueled by the reverberations of temple music. I was able to get my hands on 2 recent updates, but they didn't make things better, they made it worse. Now every time I try to play this, out of nowhere it tries to play through Steam, but won't start full stop. Which sucks not only for obvious reasons, but because I was genuinely invested in the story and I wanted to see how it ended, but now I bloody can't. As far as horror games go, both of these were quite terrifying and told compelling stories. I wouldn't call these modern classics though, but they do what they do and they do it well. If you've been thinking about taking a look at them and seeing what's on offer, I'd say go for it and check out some satisfying storytelling peppered with some well thought out scares.
我这病明明就已经好了啊！明明说好今天要带我去阿里山的。
Another month, another review done and dusted. Hope you guys found this enjoyable and of course informative, and if you really liked it then please, by all means, feel free to subscribe. Now for the next game review, I'm going to be taking a look at Generation Zero next, and as for the Darksiders 3 First Impressions, looks like that's going over into next month. I've just been really lazy with that, I do apologise. But do not fret, I'll be getting stuck into the next video cut of a movie review, starting with Captain Marvel. And in the pipeline I've also got one for the Lego Movie 2, and I'm also eyeing Us. I've got all that more coming up, so like usual, stick around.